Hey there folks, Mr. G here with another educational video. This is part 2 of our Introduction to Fractions, where we're going to be talking about some simple multiplication problems with fractions. Before we go to multiplying fractions though, it's helpful to remember how we would multiply integers. So if I had a question like 4 times 3, this means we have 4 groups of 3. So we have 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 3 is 9, plus 3 is 12. We would get an answer of 12. Now the same thing works with fractions. If I have 3 times 2 over 5, 3 groups of 2 over 5, that means I'd have 2 over 5 plus 2 over 5 plus 2 over 5. And we went over questions like this last time. We keep the denominators the same, so our answer is going to have a 5 on the bottom. 2 plus 2 is 4 plus 2 is 6, so our answer would be 6 over 5. If our whole number comes afterwards, remember that with multiplication, 4 times 3 and 3 times 4 is the same thing. So if we have 3 over 7 times 2, this is the same as 2 times 3 over 7. So if that helps you, you can think of this, instead of 3 over 7 groups of 2, 2 groups of 3 over 7. So this would be 3 over 7 plus 3 over 7, gives us a total of 6 over 7. But what happens if they're both fractions? How do we solve that? Some of you might remember how to do this, but maybe you don't remember why the rule works the way that it does. To help us with this problem, there's another way that we can think of multiplication that helps us know how we would solve a problem like this if we weren't sure what the rule was to begin with. Another way we can think of 4 times 3 is by drawing a rectangle where we have one side equal to 3, the other side equal to 4, and then our area is equal to 4 times 3. The way we would calculate this area is to divide up our rectangle. So along this side, I'm going to divide it into length 1, and then draw a grid here, and do the same thing on the other side, so that each of these is length 1, and draw a grid. Now each of these squares is 1 by 1, so that tells us that the area here is equal to 1. And now we can just count up how many squares we have. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that would tell us that the answer for our area, which we already knew, is equal to 12. How does this help us with fractions? If we go back to that example of 1 over 2 times 1 over 3, what we're trying to do is find the area of a square where this side is 1/2 and this side is 1/3. But we don't know what that area is. So we have to draw a slightly different picture. Now, if you remember from our previous video, we were able to draw fractions by shading in a larger square like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that this square right here has a side length of 1 and a side length of 1 over here. And then what we can do is, just like with our other one, where we started with a side length of 3 and 4, we're going to divide this up and to form little squares like this. So what I'm going to do on my bottom here is I'm going to divide this into 3 pieces so that each of this is 1/3. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the side. I'm going to divide it in half, so my top and bottom is equal to 1/2. Now you'll notice, once we've done this square right here, this is our answer. Remember, we want a square where it's 1/2 by 1/3. So this little green square is equal to 1/2 times 1/3. But how big is that? Well, we know that the total area here is equal to 1, and it's 1 piece out of 6 total. So in our diagram here, we have 1 shaded piece out of 6 total pieces. That tells us that our fraction, 1 over 2 times 1 over 3, would be equal to 1 over 6. Okay, that's maybe a little bit different than what you're used to seeing. Let's look at one more example, and hopefully that will help make it clear in your mind how this works. So if we have a question like 3 over 4 times 1 over 3, what we're trying to do is figure out the area of a box that's 1 by 1/3 on one side and 3/4 on the other side. So what we do, just like last time, is we set up a big square like this, where this side is equal to 1 and this side is equal to 1, and we're going to divide it up. So on our bottom here, we're going to divide it up into 4 pieces. So each of these sections is 1 over 4. And then on our side here, we're going to divide it up into 3 sections so that each side here is equal to 1 over 3. Now that we've got our grid, what we want to try and do is figure out what's what section of this diagram is 1/3 and 3/4? Well, 1/3 is pretty easy because we've got 1/3 right here. 3/4, well, that's like 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. So this whole bottom section for the first three, that's got to be like 3/4. So this whole section on the bottom here, that would be like 1/3 by 3/4. And now we can look at how many pieces we've shaded in total. We've got 3 shaded pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 total pieces. So the answer for 3/4 times 1/3 would be equal to 3/12. Let's summarize the two things that we've seen so far. So that's what we got from our two pictures so far. If you notice the pattern, in both of these cases, to get our answer, what we're doing is we're multiplying the numerator and denominator together. So in our first one, 1 times 1 equals 1, 2 times 3 equals 6. Here, 3 times 1 equals 3, 4 times 3 gives us 12. So when multiplying fractions, you multiply the numerators together and the denominators together. So 3 times 1, 4 times 3, those would give you your new numerator and denominator for your answer. So if I had a question like 3/7 times 5/9, you could definitely draw a picture for this. But if we didn't need to draw a picture, we just wanted to know what the answer was, all we would have to do is multiply our top together and multiply our bottom together. 3 times 5 is 15, 7 times 9 is 63. Now if you remember from our previous video, when we're answering these types of questions, we want to make sure that we're reducing our fractions. So we look at our numerator and our denominator. They're both odd, so 2 is not going to work. What about 3? I can divide 15 by 3. 15 divided by 3 would give us 5. And you can check that 63 divided by 3 is going to give us 21. Now we can check this. There's no number that divides 5 except for 5, and we can't divide the bottom by 5, so this would be our final answer. It's also important to point out that the same rules apply for integers and fractions when we're dealing with negatives. So if we have something like 3/10 minus 6/10, we'd use the same rule that we did before. We subtract the numerators, we keep the denominators the same. So we'd have 3 minus 6/10. 3 minus 6, that's negative 3/10. Now when you have fractions with negatives in it, if you've got a negative just on the top, it's the same as if you put the negative beside it. Whether it's on the top or it's beside it, those mean the same thing. If I've got two fractions like negative 4/5 times negative 1/2, the same rules, the same techniques that we use for integers apply here. We've got a negative times a negative, we know our answer is going to be positive. And then all we need to do is multiply the numerators together, multiply the denominators together. 4 times 1 gives us 4. Then on the bottom, 2 times 5 gives us 10. Then to finish this off, we can reduce it by dividing the top and bottom by 2. We would get our answer of 2/5. All right, let's check your understanding. 2 questions here. Pause the video, try them out on your own. You'll probably need a piece of paper to work on. And then when you're done, we'll go over the answers together. All done? All right, let's go over it. First one here, we want to multiply this using a picture, so using the diagrams that we showed you just now, and then we're going to check it using the rule that we have for multiplying fractions. So first off, let's draw a picture. So we want to find a square that's going to be 3/8 by 2/3. So the first thing that we're going to do is divide this side into 8 pieces. So each of these little chunks is 1/8. Then we're going to do the same thing on this side, except for we're going to divide it into groups of 3. And then we can complete our grid. So on the bottom, we want 3/8. So we're going to need 3 of these chunks right here. And then on the side, we're going to need 2/3. So we're going to need this length right here. So all of these squares would have a bottom of 1/8 and a height of 2/3. So that's what this picture is telling us. Now, how many squares is that out of the total? Well, let's take a look. We've got 6 squares shaded in, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got a total of 24. So our picture tells us 6/24. Let's check using our rule. Now a rule says that we multiply the tops together, multiply the bottoms together. 3 times 2 gives us 6 when we multiply these two together. And then for our denominator, 8 times 3 gives us 24. So they do match. But before we finish, let's reduce our fraction. I can see that I can divide the top and bottom by 2 because they're both even. And I know that 12 is a multiple of 3, so I can divide the top and bottom by 3 here and get my final answer of 1 over 4. For our second question here, this is one that has to do with integers as well as minus signs. Now, when we're reading this, we see that we have the same denominator, so we know that our answer is going to have a denominator of 7 because we're subtracting. Now, over here we have negative 5 minus 1, and that would give us our numerator. Negative 5 minus 1, that's the same as negative 6. And whether you write the minus sign on top or you might write it on the side, that would both be fine in terms of answers. That's the end of our second video here. That's all the videos today for basics fractions. Tune in next time where we're going to be talking a little bit about some more complicated questions having to do with mixed fractions, improper fractions, and multiplying using those types of fractions. See you then.